It's Das Baseball. And tonight, we have a massive contest for the 14-game MLB slate on the final day before September call-ups. So our 2.5 mega millionaire paying out that $1 million top prize to first place. And that's not all. This contest is part of our DraftKings Championship Series, so you will also win a ticket to compete for another a fat $1 million at our Fantasy Tournament of Champions going down in January of 2022, so in just a few months. So head over to the DK lobby now, draft your team now. Spots are filling up quickly now. Now to our panel who will help you make these decisions. DraftKings contributor Matt Meiselman, along with Rotowire's Paul Bruno and Erik Halterman. Gentlemen, this is Chase or Fade. The following here, let's start at pitcher, where we have a couple options over 10K tonight, but one guy who stands out below that in a good matchup, White Sox hurler Lucas Giolito, 8-8. He's going up against the Pirates. In his other start against them this season, Giolito went 6 innings, allowing 2 runs, striking out 7. Good for just under 20 DK fantasy points. Chase or Fade, this man is your favorite pitcher on tonight's slate, Matt.
He's my favorite pitcher if you're playing cash games. So I think Giolito has a case actually to be the highest scoring pitcher overall. He obviously does have a great matchup. And Walker Buehler and Lance McCullers have not really the same quality of matchups. I think Giolito and McCullers are probably similar overall pitchers. Buehler is currently the favorite for the NL Cy Young, but he's facing the Braves. So from that angle, Giolito should be the best. But I also think he is very likely to be just incredibly popular for GPPs. And there are so many good pitchers on this slate. You have Brandon Woodruff, Blake Snell, Buehler, McCullers, Mike Minor's in a good spot, Austin Gomber's in a good spot, Hyunjin Ryu's in a good spot. And there's probably 6 or 7 more guys I can name that I think are worthy of consideration. So for that reason, I just don't think you want to play a pitcher who's 40 to 50% owned in tournaments when there are just so many other good pivots to have. Okay, Paul, let me know what you think here. Giolito, favorite pitcher on tonight's slate, yay or nay?
You know what? The case for Giolito is a strong one tonight. But before we get to him, let me address the reason why I fade Walker Buehler. He and the Dodgers faced Charlie Morton, who's the 4th most expensive starter on tonight's slate. His strikeout rate, whip, and opposing batting average are at better levels and an impressive season-long levels. So the Dodgers are in tough despite starting Buehler. They almost negate each other tonight, and I could build a similar case for other top pitchers until I get to the guys below $9,000. I'm looking for a better win probability than the big tickets give me tonight, and that's where the case for Giolito begins. First off, he's been very good over his last 10 starts, limiting opponents to a 109 whip and a 239 opposing batting average in that stretch, while keeping a lid on walks and homers allowed, while striking out almost more than a batter an inning, actually. Then consider that he faces the Pirates, who rank 14th overall in the NL standings, despite their 6-4 record over the last 10. Their starter tonight, Bryce Wilson, has been lit up pretty good over the last 10 starts that he's made, pitching to a 4.44 ERA and allowing a 280 opposing batting average in that stretch. That's a mismatch that's worthy of paying up for Giolito. But he's the second best option among the high-priced pitchers, in my opinion. Hyunjin Ryu at $8,600 against the Orioles, and Keegan Aiken is my best bet in this range. That's the case if you want to spend over the $8,000 for a starting pitcher tonight. The Ryu pick, actually, any starting pitcher who faces the Orioles these days feels a little dirty, though. It's like betting on the free spot on your bingo card. Chalk all over that one.
Ooh, I love the free spot on the bingo card. Erik, talk to me here, dude.
Yeah, I think I'm more or less with Matt here. I think Giolito is the best option, to the point where the only reason really to not go with him is that everybody else will be. He's not quite as good as he's been in previous years. His strikeout rate was north of 32% the last 2 seasons. It's down at 28.3% this year. Sort of settling in as maybe a second-tier ace, not quite the top-tier ace he was looking like in previous seasons. But that's more than enough against the Pirates. So again, I would expect a ton of people to be on him. If you want to differentiate yourself from the crowd, you could look at guys who cost a little bit more, who have worse matchups, but have the potential to have just as good a day as Giolito if things break their way. That would be, I think, the 2 guys just ahead of him in price. Charlie Morton at $8,900 with a tough matchup against the Dodgers, but he's been excellent since the break. He's striking out 31.7% of opposing batters, and he's really just having another late career peak season. Again, tough matchup, but he's got the potential to have a great outing against anybody. So if things break your way, you could get the same score as Giolito's providing with lower ownership rates. Same deal with Brandon Woodruff, comes in a little more at 9,400, facing the Giants. Not a friendly matchup. It's at least in San Francisco, not Milwaukee, so much better park than it could have been. Woodruff has been even better than both of those guys, striking out just shy of 30% of opposing batters, walking just 6.3% en route to a 2.38 ERA. And again, if that matchup scares some people away, I think he has the potential for just as good a day as Giolito, only costs you a little bit more and should be lower owned.
Guys, Red Sox slugger Jd Martinez, he's been struggling lately, I'm not going to lie. But over his last 10 games, listen to this, he's hitting just .215 with only 1 home run. But tonight may be just what the doctor ordered as he goes up against the Rays' Ryan Yarborough. Now, the splits against Yarborough are tough to ignore. In 21 at-bats, he's hitting .571, 8 extra base hits, 8 RBI. Chase or fade, JD breaks his slump tonight and is worth rostering at $5,000, Paul.
Look, we knocked around this topic last week, AJ, on the panel here with the topic of batters versus pitchers, histories with some of our answers last week. And I think I do consider them more than the other guys on this panel, quite honestly. However, I also lean on the recent performance of power hitters and the pitchers that they'll face. So I like to pair up both sets of these numbers if they point to a batter's advantage. I just don't have faith in Martinez to pick this spot to dust himself off and get going, though. The fact that the Tampa is the opponent also factors into my decision here. In my opinion, Kevin Cash and crew do the best job of matchup analysis of any club in the majors, and I count on that to limit Martinez again tonight and actually look elsewhere for a better matchup.
Okay, Matt, you looking elsewhere for a better matchup, or you like this one?
No, I actually don't think that anyone will really be on the Red Sox tonight. Part of the problem is that when they're in Fenway as opposed to playing this game, which is in Tampa, it's just a much better park, especially for a righty to have the Green Monster there. In Tampa, it's just more of a pitching environment. So even though Martinez is likely to be 1% owned at most, I still don't really want to go there because this is such a massive slate, and the opportunity cost, especially at outfield, I think is just really large. So even if you consider the matchup against Yarborough as a good one, you do have to look at recent performance. I guess like you can't really have one without the other. I personally don't care a lot about either of those things. I just think that there are a lot of outfielders who are much cheaper, who are facing lower quality pitchers. And even though the ownership on Martinez will be low, I think it'll be low on many, many other outfielders just because there are so many of them to choose from. So even though he's contrarian, I still don't really want to go with him tonight.
All right, Erik, how about you? You want to go with him?
Yeah, I like when we can talk a little philosophy on this show. I am not somebody who looks at batter versus pitcher stats at all. The numbers are pretty clear there. You just learn way less from looking at 23 plate appearances than you do from looking at Martinez's 526 plate appearances on the season or his over 5,000 career plate appearances. There's just no real need to ignore, 98% of what he's done over his career and look at just what he's done against Yarborough. That said, what he's done over his career and this season has been very good. So it's pushing you in the same direction. And this does seem like the kind of game where he could bounce back. The one thing I'll note in his recent streak, I'm not a big fan of looking too much at recent streaks either, except for things like strikeout rate. If a guy's striking out a normal amount and balls are just being hit right at fielders' gloves, I'm not worried. In Martinez's case, though, 32% strikeout rate over his last 12 games does worry me a little. So I don't love the play here. There are some similarly priced DH types. Franmil Reyes, 5,400, going up against Mike Minor. Reyes has been on a tear lately, 4 homers in his last 10 games, hitting .324. Giancarlo Stanton at 4,800, 5 homers in his last 7 games, facing Jaime Barria. So if I want a DH slugger type, those two are guys I like more than Martinez, and it's mostly because Martinez is striking out too much in recent games.
Matty, who was a value play you are chasing this evening?
So I'm actually looking to some of the Pirates hitters against Lucas Giolito. And this is obviously purely a tournament move. I think for a cash game, play, the Pirates would be a little bit insane, honestly. But for tournaments, Giolito could be as much as 50% owned. And there will be a lot of very popular, cheaper outfielders. I think Byron Buxton's price at 3,200 against Zach Davies. There's just like, he is the chalk, guaranteed. And then you have some Nationals guys against Matt Moore, Victor Robles, and Lane Thomas are really cheap. So I just think those are the popular plays. And with the Pirates, it's actually like, the prices are good. It's not just that you want to play the guys going against the chalk pitcher every time. Like if Jacob deGrom is the number one pitcher on the slate, you don't need to play hitters against him. He's too good where he doesn't really fail very often. Giolito is pretty inconsistent, and Brian Reynolds is actually a really good hitter. So for 3,900 and no ownership and a ton of leverage, I like him a lot. I think Ben Gamble, 2,200 if he leads off, that could be the way to save salary too. I think that price is too low. But there are just going to be a lot of outfielders in this $2,000 to $4,000 range that I think are really popular, and no one's playing Brian Reynolds tonight, and it's actually kind of a decent spot for him.
All right. How about you, Erik?
Yeah, I took a look at the Rotowire value report, as I often do when we get this question, because I'm a company man.
Good.
And the second best value behind Lorenzo Cain, who I'd be a little bit nervous about given how he's done pretty much all year, although he is priced quite well tonight. The second best value is Nick Solac at 2,400. He was pretty darn mediocre for most of the year. Hit 225 with 9 homers before getting demoted in late July. It seemed like a pretty deserved demotion. Not much to get excited about there. But in 22 games for AAA Round Rock, he got things together, hit 353. He came up 8 games ago and has a hit in all 8 games, hitting 364 over that stretch with just 3 strikeouts and with 2 home runs. So he's a guy who has shown things at the plate at times, not a ton, but a lot more than $2,400 level talent at the plate. Maybe, a mid 3,000 kind of guy. And he'll get the platoon advantage against Austin Gomber, who's broke out, maybe you could say, to be a completely fine option this season, but he's been quite cold over his last 3 starts, has an 8.56 ERA over that stretch, striking out 18.6% of opposing batters, walking 10%. So things have not gone well for him lately, which I think makes Solac at a price this low, I think definitely one of the best values on the day.
Paul, your favorite value play. Go ahead, give it to me.
Well, with all the talk of high-priced starters likely attracting a lot of attention, as the guys are suggesting, this is a spot where I will look to spend only $7,300 on Jameson Taillon tonight. Look at what he's done over his last 10 starts. He's 5-0 with a 106 whip, a 212 opposing batting average allowed, and is pitching to a 267 ERA with a 52 strikeouts in his last 57 and a third innings. And we all know that the Yankee offense is in gear. His mound opponent's Jaime Barria of the Angels, meanwhile, and he struggled in his 8 appearances, especially in his last 3 where he's been torched for 18 hits and 9 earned runs in only 8 1/3 innings pitched. That's resulted in 2 negative DraftKings scores and 1 other of just 5.3 points. I point to Taillon and a big win probability for him and the Bombers tonight.
All right, guys, super quick here on Slate Approved Pick, please. So your favorite DFS play tonight is who, Erik?
Yeah, I think there's some pitchers that are under 8,000 that I like a lot. I'm not sure if I like Blake Snell at 7,700 or Tarek Skubal at 7,400. I think I'm going to go with Skubal here. He's facing an A's team, which is pretty good, but Skubal's been pitching like an ace recently. His last 4 starts, a 1.59 ERA, striking out 30% of opposing batters, walking just 3.3%. Doesn't really get much better than that. And actually, he's been quite good since the start of May after a really bad April. 28.7% strikeout rate versus just a 6.4% walk rate, leading to a 3.57 ERA. I think that more than justifies his price already. And when you consider that he's been, again, as good as anybody over his last 4 starts, I think 7,400 is an absolute steal.
Paul?
There's a lot of cheap bats that make good sense tonight, Emerson. I like Lourdes Gurriel at $4,000. He is 11 for his last 33, and I look for him to have a breakout power night against the dreadful O's and their awful starting pitcher, Keegan Aiken. In that same game, I really like Ryan Mountcastle for $3,900. He comes to this game on a tear, going 12 for his last 39 with 5 homers and along the way. And he has had great success against Jays all season long. He gets a platoon advantage against Ryu, who has had his issues with the long ball. But my top option in this lower range is Josh Donaldson, a notorious power hitter who's wavered between very hot and very cold all season. Well, he's on fire right now with 12 hits, including 5 homers over his last 37 ABs. He faces Zach Davies, who's been terrible over his last 10 starts, pitching to an unsightly 6.49 ERA with 13 homers allowed in only 43 innings pitched. Take the hot batter over this frosty pitcher tonight.
Okay, Matt, bring us home.
So as much as I love team stacks of teams that are bad just to get leverage against highly owned pitchers, I do think some of the best opportunity we get in DFS is when there are actually really good offenses that just aren't getting attention. So with the Twins being way underpriced and the Yankees to a lesser extent, Blue Jays too, I think that the Dodgers just won't get a lot of attention here. And I always talk about the Dodgers, so I'll throw in one more because the Dodgers do have this Hall of Fame level lineup. And even though it's Charlie Morton, there's tons of upside for them. But maybe better than the Dodgers is that the Rockies have Coors Field level prices tonight, which is going to keep a lot of people off of them. And they're in Texas, so it's not Coors Field, but they're facing Jordan Lyles. And there's still a ton of upside for them in this matchup. Trevor Story had 2 home runs last night. If the roof is open for the game, even better, and then Texas actually turns into the hitting environment that we're used to seeing. But even so, even if the roof is closed and it's more of a normal stadium, the Rockies actually have some power, and Lyles is bad enough that I think there's a lot of upside there, and there just won't be any attention to that stack because of the pricing.